Hello, sippers. I'm Martia,
I'm Demetrius.
And I'm Renee.
and welcome to this week's episode of Sip and Unwine True Crime Podcast. Hey, ladies. Hey, sippers.
Hey,
Hey,
ladies. Hey,
ladies.
sisters.
Hey,
We
whoop
are back for a
whoop.
new episode.
Yes, this
Yes.
this is our favorite day of the week, True Crime
It sure
Tuesday.
is.
We
Yep,
need that on a t-shirt.
we
True Crime
do.
I know,
Tuesday.
right? I
Yep.
I mean, we're
know.
starting to get a little following. I'm gonna need y'all to let us know if you want a t-shirt. We need some coins around this place, some coins.
We're gonna assume they want a T-shirt, and we'll go ahead and get that
Oh, that's
popping
what I'm
behind the
talking
scenes.
about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sippers, if you didn't already know, although we are a true crime podcast, we also discuss many other topics. So please make sure you keep listening after our case discussion because we have a few other segments you don't want to miss. Let me go ahead and tell these sippers what we're sipping on for this episode.
Yes, that's important.
Yes,
Very
it
important.
is. So for this episode, we've got key lime margaritas on deck, and they are actually pretty good, if I may say so myself.
That's like one of my favorites.
You're welcome, ladies. So we're having ours on the rocks for this episode, but sippers, you can also whip up a frozen version of this cocktail. It's just a few ingredients, which includes key lime juice, agave, tequila, and triple sec. But I'll go ahead and post more details with the recipe on our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Okay?
Yep. So head on over there.
It's that
Check us out.
tequila for me, baby. It's the tequila.
Exactly.
It's the
It is
tequila.
hitting. Now, before I begin this week's episode, I do want to acknowledge the people that these crimes have left a lasting impact on. We want to send out our heartfelt sympathy to not only the survivors, but also the loved ones and friends of all the victims we are about to discuss. All right, sippers. So, ladies, this week's episode is going to be a little different from the episodes that I've hosted in the past.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on just one case, I'm actually going to share a couple of unusual cases that caught my attention. And I don't know if y'all ever have moments like this, but I may see a case or watch a show or hear another podcast discuss a case, and I'm thinking, oh, I got to run this by my girls. We got to talk about this because I don't
Most
know
definitely.
about y'all.
You know I love it.
Okay, I'm glad y'all can relate because I don't know about y'all, but I can't just talk about true crime to just anybody in my circle. So
Right.
yeah. So these are those kind of cases. So
Okay, this is gonna be interesting.
for this first case, it actually happened back in December 2011, and it took place in Anaheim, in California. Even though they had a suspect for this case and pretty much knew who did it, they didn't convict the suspect until 10 years later. And you guys might have heard this, but we'll see. A California man killed his wife and then propped up her body on a sofa as her children opened Christmas presents, has finally been sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. So you have not heard this case?
No, he propped her body.
And I wanted to cover this so bad, but it made me nervous.
Oh my
Yeah, so
gosh. Ooh, tell me about
I
this.
was nervous.
yeah, we're just gonna really scratch the surface here. So I didn't go into a whole lot of detail, but yeah, this was something that kind of made my skin crawl because I know every case is crazy, but every case is crazy in its own way, and this one right here just really threw me. So dock worker William Wallace, who's 39 last year, so he'll be about 40 now, he killed his then 26-year-old wife and mother of three, Zazelle Preston, after they attended a Christmas Eve party in 2011. They got into an argument that night in the apartment, so neighbors could hear them arguing that night. And apparently, she also passed away. And that Christmas morning, he dragged Zazelle's body from the bedroom, propped her up on the living room couch the next day, and put sunglasses on her. And when the kids were asking him, like, hey, you know, mommy's here, but why isn't she responding to us? Why isn't she talking to us? He actually told the kids, your mom ruined Christmas because she got drunk last night.
How old were the kids? Do you have the ages?
Yes, the kids. Okay, so they had one infant child together. So they had an infant son who was 7 weeks old at the time. Then Zazelle had two daughters who were 3 years old and 8 years old at the time.
So I guess the 3-year-old wouldn't know, but the 8-year-old, my goodness.
When I tell you, when I saw that headline, I said, I can't believe this man did that.
I didn't hear that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And again, he's 40 now, but he was like 27, 28 when this happened. So he was a little younger. So it's like, wow, what in the world? This is just beyond. So he had actually served some jail time before for beating his wife and domestic violence issues. And allegedly, there was also a restraining order out against him. But however it worked out, the couple got back together despite that restraining order. Zazel's mother said that William beat and tortured her daughter and at the same time mentally assassinated the kids, is basically how she put it, because the kids saw some of that abuse that was allegedly happening in that home. Zazel, her mother, became the guardian of the couple's 3 children, which included the baby and the 2 daughters. That murder, when it happened, was just a few weeks before Zazel was due to graduate from college. And ironically, she was studying to become a domestic violence counselor at the time of the tragedy.
Oh, the irony of it
Isn't that
all.
terrible?
I know.
That's terrible.
Oh my God.
They
A
said
domestic
that
violence counselor. So she would counsel people who were in that situation. It's unfortunate she didn't take her own advice that she probably would have been given out to other people.
I know. Isn't it ironic? She's willing to help others, and look at what happened
Couldn't
to
help
her.
herself.
Exactly. Wow. And she probably, because this kind of happens with victims, she probably just thought he was going to change. And maybe she felt like her situation would have turned out differently. It's so sad. I mean,
wasn't going to get that bad.
Exactly.
Oof.
And what was so sad about this, though, because, victims are never going to be here to defend themselves. So it's a shame that the defense was trying to say that Zazel died from injuries after she got drunk and tripped and fell into a glass table. But they were trying to say that was an accident, not that William had murdered her. But even if that was the case, the problem is the fact that there was a fight between the two that he probably instigated that caused her death.
So did they say how she died? Like, was the real cause?
So here's what happened. The oldest child, who was 17 at the time the trial came into play, she actually got up and testified what she remembered. So William also testified too. He did admit that they argued that night, and he told one of Zazel's family members that he even, quote, tossed his wife around a little bit because they both had been drinking, but he denied murdering her. And as I mentioned, he had already served some jail time in a previous domestic violence dispute, so people were giving him the side eye in the beginning. But the oldest daughter, who was 17 when she gave her testimony, she said that her mom did fall into a glass table, but it was when they were arguing and the argument turned physical. She then said that her stepfather asked her to help him pull glass from her mother's body. She said that she then witnessed her stepfather carrying her mother's body into the bathroom, possibly in an attempt to continue cleaning her up. But she said she remembers her mother's body being limp, and even at one time her head hit the toilet. So however he carried her into that bathroom, she remembers her body was so limp. So the young lady said that when her mother's head hit the toilet, she felt like her mother had probably already passed away. But at that point, she witnessed her stepfather putting her mother to bed and acting like she was going to sleep.
So I have a question on that then. So if she went through glass, I mean, there had to be a lot of blood, right? And cuts.
The paramedics and police, when they did get called to the house, which I'm not clear who called the police, I'm not sure if one of the kids did or not, they did say there was blood throughout the property. The woman had a gash on her head. She had been bleeding from the head. There were holes punched through the walls, and there was actually a door that was off of its hinges. So yes, there was actually a crime scene when they arrived to this apartment. So yeah, this is going to be a Christmas that I don't know about the 3-year-old. We know the 7-week-old won't remember. Right. But I wonder if this is a Christmas that the now 18-year-old daughter won't forget. How sad is that?
That is
terrible. This
I'm just thinking on how
you
cover that. Like you prop her up and you put sunglasses on her, but if she has a big gash in her head, it's not.
And I don't know if he may have covered that gash with a hat or a scarf or how he did any of that.
I mean, like,
but
you had the audacity
assumed the kids wouldn't notice.
Yeah.
But why would you prop her up like she's living?
Isn't that crazy? It's just terrible. Like I could not even wrap my mind around that.
And so he didn't even get caught until last year, or he was in jail up until then.
He was immediately looked at as a suspect.
Okay, got it.
So my bad for leaving that out, sippers and ladies. He was picked up as a suspect back in 2011. So by the time he had his trial in 2021, he had served about 9, almost 10 years. And So he was definitely.
I thought he was free all this time.
He had $1 million bill. Yeah, he had $1 million bill. So I guess he could have. If he could have come up with that, he could have gotten out, but he did not. He was sentenced to 15 years to life for the murder of his wife.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. Wow. So he got 9 years credit for the time that he had already served during the. I guess I don't know. I still don't understand why some trials, take longer than others to happen. I'm still not familiar with that part of the law. But yeah, they gave him time served, those 9 years. And even though they were trying to blame the victim, and he does have a domestic violence background, they didn't actually have evidence that says he deliberately killed her. I think that might be the little loophole here, because I can't imagine any other reasons. That's just my opinion based on what I was able to find out.
My thing is the audacity to prop her up like she sleep, and then sit her up on the sofa, whether the sofa, the chair, and act like she's alive with glasses on, with sunglasses. What is wrong with him? Please never get out. Never get out. Because if you did this to her, you'll do it.
So,
that's terrible, though. Oh my gosh.
Is.
And I'm surprised I didn't even hear about that. Like, I don't even remember hearing anything like that. So
I don't think I heard about it until his trial was about to happen. So, I mean, that was only a couple years back, but I definitely did not hear about it in 2011 when this case happened. Yeah, so that's the first case I wanted to touch on. And I've got several sources for this story. I compiled information from different places. So, from people.com, bossip.com, dailymailuk.com, ocregister.com, and also
a lot of people were reporting on it. I'm surprised I didn't hear it.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay, ladies and sippers. Before I go to the next case, I do want to share some statistics I found from the UNODC, which is the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime.
Okay.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research, because I'm always focusing on, well, at least for this season, I tend to focus on those crimes that are domestic related and people who commit crimes against their family or their spouses. So I said, let me do a little bit of research here. So the UNODC is the global leader in the fight against illicit drugs and international crime. They were established in 1997 through a merger between the United Nations Drug Control Program and the Center for International Crime Prevention. So the UNODC operates in all regions of the world throughout an extensive network of field offices, and the UNODC headquarters is located in Vienna, Austria. That's based on the information off their Wikipedia page. But from the UNODC website, I've got some crime estimates from the year 2020. There's some 47,000 women and girls worldwide were killed by their intimate partners or other family members in 2020.
Wow.
This means that on average, I felt like I could too, to some extent, but when you put numbers out there, it kind of makes it a little bit bigger, in my opinion, because that number basically means that on average, a woman or girl is killed by someone in her own family every 11 minutes.
Wow.
Right.
Where trends can be calculated, they show that the magnitude of such gender-related killings remains largely unchanged. However, with only marginal increases and decreases over the past decade. So for 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, these numbers are kind of like steady. Yeah. In 2020, it is estimated that out of a total of 81,000 female victims of homicide, 47,000 of them are women and girls. So those family members that are committing these crimes include not just fathers, mothers, but also uncles and brothers. And the number one country is Asia. Asia accounted for the largest number of female intimate partner / family related killings, with a number of about 18,600 victims in 2020.
Okay, I will get into how I could see that. I do my languages.
Yes,
y'all know I do my languages, so I be all in everybody's country's business and numerical numbers. But yeah, they do a lot of cheating over there.
Really? Okay, so that's what some of their crimes.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's a lot of infidelities that happen.
And instead of them just getting mad and leaving, they
right?
They do it. Okay, wow. So Asia's the largest number for 2020. Then this was followed by Africa with about 18,100 is the number. So Africa's number 2. In the Americas with about 7,300. And I'm assuming that would be North America and South America, because the article didn't differentiate, right?
Yeah, they combined it.
Wow.
Yep. The Americas would be 3rd. And then Europe is accounted for 2,600 cases a year of female intimate partner / family related killings. And the the lowest recorded number is coming from a place called Oceania,
Where's
which only
that
has about 300. So for those who may not know, Oceania, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's a region of several thousands of islands throughout the Central and South Pacific Ocean. And it also
because ain't nobody there. That's probably why.
Right, exactly. And it also includes, you know, those islands plus Australia, which is one of the smallest continents in terms of total land area.
Man, I need to move there then. Good Lord.
I mean,
you know?
Yeah, that sounds like the safest region in the world. But like, as you mentioned, Renee, one thing that is important to note with this kind of data is that these numbers are influenced by the differences in the size of the populations for each of those regions. So yeah, you basically pointed that out. So with that being said, Asia does have an estimated population of 4.6 billion people as of 2020. So it is by far the most populous region. So it's not surprising that they would lead.
They will have the biggest number.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I like to point all that out too, because even when people say anything about 1 in 10, you got to really know the details with how those statistics came to be 1 in 10, right? So all right, ladies, with all those stats out the way, are you ready for this next case?
Oh my gosh. Not really, but go ahead.
I mean, after all those statistics, I don't know.
Y'all can go ahead and take a little sip or whatever, get ready for the next case. This next case is going to take us to India, which is located in South Asia.
Oh no.
And you know, I thought you was going to say that it was going to be one of those a country like India or something to be one of the top ones. Yeah, because I know that they
I was like waiting too. I was like,
and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, India is the second largest country in Asia, and it is considered an Indian subcontinent. All right, ladies. So this is an article from CNN, and I came across it, and I was like, okay, we got to discuss this one too. So this article is basically a year old. It's from last April. This is the most recent information that I could find about this case.
Okay.
So neighbors woke up to a woman's cries for help just after 2 a.m. in a place called Bhawan Kheri, which is a village in the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. People came out of their sleep and came out of their homes to find a horrific scene of mass murder. Latif Ullah Khan, one of the first to arrive at the two-story family home on April 15, 2008, found another villager, Shabnam, lying unconscious on the floor near her father, Shaukat Ali, whose neck was slashed. The bodies of Shabnam's two brothers, her mother, sister-in-law, and 14-year-old cousin lay almost beheaded in a blood-splattered room, according to court documents. Her baby nephew, who they would later discover had been strangled to death, appeared to be asleep between his parents' bodies. The case made headlines back in 2008. Not only had Shabnam murdered 7 of her family members, including a 10-month-old child, but she was 8 weeks pregnant at the time. Shabnam and her lover Salim were found guilty of the murders and sentenced to hang. If she is executed, Shabnam, who, just like Salim, is only referred to in court documents by one name, will be the first woman given the death penalty in India since 1955. But with her execution looming, Shabnam's legal teams are trying to halt it, and they're arguing that she's a victim too in this case. Her lawyer says that her client, who has never admitted to the crime, is a casualty of a patriarchal society that puts caste above all else. Aside from the people who died that night, the couple's crime created another victim, their son. His name is Bitu, which is not his real name for the protection of his identity, but Shabnam raised in prison before she had to give him up. So as of the article date, which is back in 2021, he was 12. So
she raised him in prison all the way up until 12?
Apparently they do things differently over there in the prisons. Yes, because I've not heard of a woman being able to keep her child in the prison, but apparently in India they make a way for that to happen. And so he's 12 and he was in his mother's belly when the crime happened, right? But he is old enough to where he's now asking for the courts to show his mother mercy.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah, so
I can see that.
Are you all wondering why she committed the crime?
I am.
I mean,
actually.
I thought that was coming first.
I
was
know.
ready.
No, I had to set you up for the climax here.
Oh my gosh.
So,
what are you about to say?
So Shabnam and Salim, they were young lovers who lived in the same village, but their families didn't approve of their union. Shabnam, who was 22 at the time of the murders, was an educated teacher from the South 5 community. Salim, who was 24 at that time, was an unemployed Pathan youth. Although Indian castes are often associated with the Hindu community, some Similar social hierarchies exist amongst Muslim families based on their historical occupation or which part of the Arab world they come from. Families often pressure children to marry within their own communities, and failure to do so can lead to violence and, in extreme cases, honor killings when family members are murdered for bringing alleged shame into the family. So y'all getting the gist here?
Wow.
So before the killings, Lal Muhammad, who was the father of Shabnam's deceased sister-in-law, tipped off the police about the couple's relationship. And that's how serious this is over there. They call the police. Like, she's out here dating somebody that our parents don't approve of.
And you call the police,
Right. Yeah. And I guess, this is just me living here in the United States. So if we have any international sippers, please don't judge me. But I just had no idea that dating was treated this way in other parts of the world.
Let's say, that's how I heard about a lot of those honor killings and all that they kill their siblings or, their family members if a girl does something or, XYZ that they don't like and bringing shame to the family.
I had no idea. Wow. Crazy. So what they told the authorities when the father called, he said, Shabnam is going in the wrong direction. She wants to marry Salim and the atmosphere at home is very tense. And that's basically what he testified at, about in court. A fellow teacher at the school where Shabnam worked testified that Shabnam had told him she wanted to marry Salim, but her family opposed it. So she knew that her family did not want her to marry this young man. A cousin even testified that Shabnam's father did not like the situation and he beat her for it. And what people didn't know at the time was that she was pregnant. Everybody's kind of having this, right? Yeah. So everybody's kind of having this fit around her, but they didn't know the whole story. They knew, okay, yeah, she's dating this guy, but they had no idea that she was pregnant. Basically, the judge did decide that the couple did have other ways of escaping the quote conservative society that would extend beyond murdering 7 people. The courts actually are saying it's not clear if Shabnam knew herself that she was 8 weeks pregnant at the time of the murders. And after I read this article, I kind of felt like they threw that in there as a part of her defense.
Yeah, but I think she knew, and that's probably why. Because
I almost feel like that's why it was so drastic. Yeah, exactly. Right. So the prosecution, of course, is saying exactly what we just said, that pregnancy is partially what may have motivated the murders, and that she killed her family so that she would be the sole heiress to their property and live in comfort with Salim and their newborn.
Right.
Yeah. So apparently they had money, according to this article. So basically how it happened, they're calling it the massacre that began with a cup of tea. So on April 14, 2008, Shabnam laced her family's evening drinks with a sedative. Salim brought that sedative with the help of a fruit seller, and this is what the court found out. And then as the family slept, Shabnam called Salim, who came to the house with an axe.
Oof. Man.
Shabnam held up the heads of each member one by one and slashed their throats and killed them. Salim confessed the day after the murders to Bilal Ahmad, who was a tea seller who had connections to the district police chief. The court heard that Salim was hoping that Ahmad's connections would help him evade punishment, but it did the exact opposite, because Ahmad basically went and reported Salim's confession to the police, and he even repeated the accounts in court. And basically he said that Salim told him, I have made a mistake. It is so terrible. And Ahmad said that Salim told him, I have made a mistake. I am in love with Shabnam, a girl from my village, and she loves me too. We have vowed to live and die together. We cannot live without each other. Because of this, Shabnam's family beat her up and said they won't let me marry her. And he's basically saying that motivated him to take part in this murder. Other witnesses placed Salim at a pharmacy on the day before the murders, but the pharmacist declined to sell him any sedatives. So typically in India, strong sleeping pills can only be sold with a prescription from a doctor. So Salim then asked for help from a fruit seller outside the shop who helped him buy the pills. So I guess that's kind of like our street pharmacy here in the United States. Like if you can't get what you need from where you're supposed to go, you buy it off the street. Right, exactly. Salim also confessed the crime to a village administrative officer the day after the massacre, asking him to use his political connections to keep him out of jail. After the police arrested him, Salim retrieved a blood-stained axe from a pond that was consistent with the description of the actual murder weapon. Also, empty packets of the pills that were used to sedate the family were recovered from Shabnam. Shabnam initially claimed some hoodlums had entered their home and committed the crime, but police dismissed that theory right away because of the impossibility of them having scaled the high roof of the house. The home's iron door had been locked from the inside, and there were no fingerprints or other evidence suggesting the presence of any unidentified assailants. So when Khan, the neighbor, arrived at the house, he said he found Shabnam unconscious. However, the Supreme Court noted in its 2015 judgment that Shabnam had feigned unconsciousness and laid by the side of the deceased father's mutilated body to callously insinuate that the crime had been committed by an outsider. This story is just, like I said,
so gruesome.
It is, and it's one that I just couldn't wrap my mind around. I mean, there's so many elements
to
here.
The extreme,
right?
Like that seems like the extreme.
All the way from her being pregnant to having the baby in the prison with her, or
exactly. Yeah. So there's more. So while Shabnam and Salim had allegedly murdered so they could be together, they turned on each other during the trial. Shabnam. Now I was surprised about that part, and I'm like, y'all were so in love until the trial.
That's how it usually happens. Yeah.
Shabnam alleged Salim killed everyone alone. Salim, basically, he was like, I didn't have anything to do with it, but I am guilty of helping her get rid of the evidence. The district court found the pair guilty of murdering 7 people and sentenced them to death by hanging, as I mentioned earlier. The couple appealed to the High Court of Uttar Pradesh, as well as the Supreme Court of India, the country's highest court, but each time their claims of innocence were dismissed, which good. So moving forward, Shabnam and Salim's son, Bitu, he was born in prison in December 2008, which is basically 8 months after the murder. Now, the boy's foster father did request that during the article they didn't use his real name because he did not want the stigma of this murder to be associated with his foster child.
That's good.
Yeah, but Shabnam was able to raise Bitu, her son, in the women's prison where she shared barracks with other inmates. So apparently they allowed other inmates too to have their children come and go as the mothers were freed. But in this situation, Bitu was one that stayed, waiting for the day when he turned 6, and that was when he would be able to be sent to live with someone on the outside. So I'm not sure what the stipulations are for this whole situation where you can raise your children in prison, but apparently it expires after a certain year, and for him it was 6. But until that time, other kids were in and out of that system. So I guess for the other ones who were there, they were raised and they left, but his mom wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. So they say that Shabnam doted on her son and was a pretty decent mother behind bars. She tried to teach him as much as she could. She used to take classes for him, and she would teach him the alphabet, numbers, all these different things that she was able to do in prison. It just kind of blew my mind. Like I mentioned, she was an educated woman herself. So just to kind of note here, you ladies know, and the sippers probably know, I'm always concerned about the kids. So I thought this was interesting because the story did touch on the kid, and it did note that life is not easy for Bitu, because even though his name is not public in this particular publication, people do know who he is. So media attention has disrupted his life, and it has disrupted his ability to focus.
Hell, also, and he knows who he is and what his mother did.
Exactly. I was getting ready to say that last point because he knows who he is. Yes, he also has struggled with being the child of murderers.
Yeah.
So one day when he had gone to the mosque, someone told him that he was the son of, the woman who was going to be hanged. That was an incident that affected him a lot and stuck with him. And just as an example, that's something that he said he was in bed all day thinking about that. So he's actually still wants his mom to kind of be released to some extent because of who she is. That goes into this plea for mercy. So while Salim swung the axe, Shabnam's role in slaughtering her old family shocked the nation. They're saying she served them tea with the love that a father would not suspect his daughter was giving him poison, and that a mother would not suspect that her daughter was going to poison her. So they're just saying that in itself was an evil act. And then her brother, sister-in-law, cousin, no one suspected that she was going to turn around and poison them with this tea. But she's claiming, and so is her defense team, that she's being demonized and that she shouldn't be committed for this crime. Right. So yeah, she's trying to escape the death penalty. The fight here is that women are judged for what society considers to be their moral failings, but women don't make the laws. So that's kind of her argument here. Almost like they're saying she was backed into a corner and was in between a rock and a hard place. So yeah, death warrants were issued in this case back in 2015, but the couple still was not executed. So at this point, just move forward to, like I said, 2021, the most recent update that I was able to find, both of these murderers, the couple, which they're not a couple anymore, but they're basically waiting. There's a stay for execution, and she is currently on death row for this crime.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That is such an extreme case, like, to do that.
That was a lot of people murdered.
Yeah.
awful. Terrible.
With an axe. Oh my gosh.
Right.
To your family.
Right. And I guess I'm so used to hearing about crimes over here in the United States. It's usually a gun.
A gun. Yeah, but they might not have
mm-hmm.
access to it like we do here, maybe.
Right. And that's exactly what I was getting ready to say. So to hear about, I guess you would have to have poisoned or sedated these people to murder 7 people with an axe, because if they were awake, they probably would have tackled you, ran off or something. Yeah, so I cover a lot of cases in the U.S., of course, because that's where we are. But every now and then, I do find it interesting to see what's happening in other parts of the world as far as crime is concerned. So, yeah, that
was a doozy.
Story.
That really was a doozy.
Definitely was.
Really?
Yes.
All
right, so we're coming close to the end of this episode, but we're not quite at the end yet, ladies.
Okay, because my margarita is about to be out.
What we got for them?
All right, ladies and sippers, I want to provide an update to a case I covered last July. It was actually episode 8, so it was early into the launch of our podcast, and the episode was called Into the Night, the case of Cheryl Wright, who was convicted of killing her husband, Lorenzen Wright. So
the basketball player, right?
Yes, the basketball player, Lorenzen Wright. According to CBS News, a jury has convicted a Tennessee man in the murder of former NBA player Lorenzen Wright, who was found dead in a field in Memphis back in 2010. So this development is March 2022. So it's taken all those years for the second person involved in this crime to be convicted. A 12-person jury found 51-year-old Billy Ray Turner guilty of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder in the death of the former NBA player. Shelby County, which is in Tennessee, the criminal court judge Lee Coffey sentenced Turner to life in prison for murder, and he'll be sentenced for the other charges at a later date. Lorenzen Wright's mother, Deborah Marion, she did speak to reporters after the verdict, saying, quote, "It'll never be closure because I'll never see my son again."
Right.
And just a quick recap on this case. Back in July 28, 2010, for sippers who may not be familiar with this case, back on July 28, 2010, Lorenzen Wright's body was found riddled with bullets in a field in East Memphis. The former first-round pick had been missing for several days before his body had been discovered. Now, Turner, he actually previously pleaded guilty to possessing a weapon as a convicted felon, and the 51-year-old was in possession of 2 guns when he was initially arrested for Lorenzen Wright's murder back in 2017. And Turner was actually serving a 16-year sentence in prison already before a gun charge prior to this latest conviction. Now, mind you, Billy Ray Turner, remember in that case, ladies, he was a deacon at the church. So I wanted to throw that back.
Oh man, really?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. He was a deacon. Yeah. Oh man.
That's how Cheryl Wright found him. They were both going to the same church.
Yep, I remember that.
So Cheryl Wright, she had that plan to have Lorenzen killed, so she went and approached Turner, and she had her cousin Jimmy Martin help her carry out the plan. And not only was Turner a member of her church, but he also was a landscaper and had a secret romantic relationship with Cheryl Wright. So a lot going on there. So Billy Turner and Cheryl Wright, they were both indicted back in 2017. Cheryl Wright had entered a guilty plea to facilitation of murder in July 2019, and she was sentenced back then to 30 years in prison. And when Lorenzen Wright was murdered, this is the part I didn't know. Martin, which is the cousin in the case, Jimmy Martin was one of the people who went ahead and told the details of this case. But I didn't know at the time he was actually facing charges of murder himself. He was looking at charges for killing his girlfriend.
Oh my goodness. There's just murder all around him. Goodness.
Exactly. So he ended up being convicted for that. And is currently in prison for that charge. And he actually did receive immunity from prosecution in the murder case of Lorenzen Wright. So he'll never get charged for his participation in that murder, but he's in prison for another murder. And Martin did testify that Turner and himself, they both met with Cheryl Wright to come up with a plan to murder Lorenzen, but when they tried to commit that crime, they weren't able to carry it out. Basically, that's how the murder ended up happening in Tennessee. It's just terrible because they profited off of this case. They had money, basically $1 million life insurance policy. So that still is not enough. I don't care what nobody said. That still is not enough to do all that.
I think you stated she wrote a book too, right?
She did. She wrote a book. It was almost kind of reminded me of the whole O.J. Simpson.
If I did kill her, or if I did it, or something like that. I can't remember the exact title name of that, but
I can't remember it either. But it gave me those vibes.
Stupid. Wow, so, that's real bold.
She was exactly. Also, just another update. It's tied into Lorenzen Wright, but it doesn't have anything to do with his case. Back in early May 2nd, Lorenzen Wright's goddaughter was gunned down during an apparent act of domestic violence. So that was pretty sad. And of course, his mom, Deborah Marion, is connected to the goddaughter. So Lorenzen Wright's mother was quoted, "It's like 12 years ago, all over again."
All over again, right? I could see
she
that.
Said,
man, she just can't get any peace. Like,
exactly.
Somebody let her rest already.
Right. She said there's always somebody murdering somebody for nothing. His mother said she was shocked to learn that her son's goddaughter had died in such a violent manner. And the boyfriend at the time ran from the condominium that they were living in to go get help. But he was actually the one who pulled the trigger. Yeah. Oof. So that's pretty sad. She said that her son Lorenzen Wright, when he became this young lady's godfather, took that baby in as if she was his own daughter. So her name is Retiva Frierson. So that's just one thing after another. But one good thing about this grandmother, though, Lorenzen Wright's mother, she did recently connect with one of Lorenzen Wright's oldest sons. So if there's a such thing as there being a lighter note, that would be the only thing light about this series of events here, is that also in either late 2021 or early 2022, she did reconnect with one of Lorenzen Wright's sons, and she was looking forward to trying to establish a relationship with some of the other children as well. But
so that's unfortunate, though.
It really is. So I just want to share that update with our sippers. I know this was a heavy episode, ladies and sippers, but we are a true crime show, and sometimes I have to remind myself of that when I'm like, wow, it's a lot. That will bring me to the end of this week's episode.
Oh my gosh,
we're
at the
end. I know.
Yes.
No, sippers.
This was a good episode, Martia.
Right.
Good information and stuff. Yeah. No, but I mean, it's good with the statistics and everything. It was really good, to hear some of that stuff, because some stuff I didn't even realize about that number of people.
Here.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the dialogue, ladies and sippers. Make sure you tune in to all of our different social media platforms, from Instagram to Facebook to Twitter and Podbean and everywhere that you can listen to podcasts. We are there, including the audio that we upload to YouTube.
Yep. And we see you guys out there. We appreciate you guys.
Yes, we really do.
And thank you for all the lovely comments. We really appreciate that.
We really do. Yes, all of that. All right, ladies. Bye, ladies. Bye, sippers.
Bye, sippers. Bye, ladies.
Bye.